Hey everybody, I'm so glad you could make it tonight. It's really important that you guys came because it shows me that you guys are dedicated to financial freedom, building a really secure retirement. And so we're just so glad that you came. Just a fun little tidbit. Everybody that came tonight, we are going to reach out to you later and get you these books. It's Rich Dad Poor Dad. It is an amazing book. Actually, I was meeting with a realtor this morning. He's like, that's like the first book I've read in a long time, and it was a good read. And so he's ready to jump in on the rental property bandwagon and start making some more wealth for him and his family. So we're just gonna have Dylan tee us off here and gonna get us started.
Perfect. So like Nikki said, thank you all for coming. I do encourage you though to, kind of really tune in here and maybe, turn the TV off, put the cell phone away. Really happy that you decided to kind of, better yourself, hop on this call. And kind of think a little bit outside of the box, right? So it's kind of some things that we've been preaching here at NEO, but also let's just kind of talk about what we're here to kind of conquer here. So think of these things and honestly think of them for your own personal finance, right? And be honest with yourself. Like just be completely honest. There's no right or wrong answer. Some things we're going to talk about. How much do you need to retire? Do you have enough saved now? Are you on track to retire comfortably? Or do you know what that maybe looks like? What are your current retirement strategies? Anything outside of a typical 401k? And have you considered a retirement start? Oh, like I said, outside of your 401k, the next bulletin. So anyway, as many of you know, we switched over to NEO. NEO is the Greek word for new. We made the transition, man, it's almost been probably half a year, maybe a little longer now, which is flown by. But we kind of just felt like joining NEO really aligned with what we believed in, right? So we kind of feel like the mortgage industry needs a new beginning. We like to take more of a financial holistic approach rather than just, getting someone into a home. There's a difference between being a homeowner and being the most successful homeowner you could possibly be. And that's kind of what we really strive for. And that's kind of why we do these presentations like we do. So, like we said at NEO, we're on a mission to empower our clients with financial literacy and help them guide their journey to financial freedom. In this case, also talking about retirement. Moving forward. So again, the new approach to your mortgage, building wealth, not only for yourself, but generational wealth and ways to get there. So we want to look at different strategies outside, we're going to talk about retirement a lot, but even outside of that to really maximize your financial freedom moving forward. Nikki.
So I did some homework on, what's out there. What's the reality of the retirement picture for America? And I found quite a few heart-wrenching articles. 66% of Americans are worried they'll run out of money in retirement. Most Americans value a retirement plan or retirement planning, but fewer than half appear to do it. At 75, I still have to work. Millions of Americans can't afford to retire. 41% of Americans say it's going to take a miracle to be ready for retirement. Sorry, that one makes me laugh, but the reality is there. 55% of Americans are behind on savings for retirement, and that's okay. Is it okay? I don't think it's okay. Here's the Vanguard's How America Saves 2022 report. And so let's just kind of dive into this a little bit. So I'm age 36. Let's look at my fellow 36-year-olds and where we're at. So 35 to 44, median saves has about 36,000. Average is about 97,000. Is that enough? Is that the right, are we all on the right track to get to retirement? And then I look at people my parents' age, so 55 to 64, the light at the end of the tunnel, they can see retirement coming and they're not it's right there within their grasp. Their average saved is 256,000. Do you guys, again, feel free to ask questions, interact with us and let us know what you're thinking. Do you guys think that 256,000 is probably needed for retirement? Do you think that is gonna do that? Let's see what we have here. Not sure. Okay, that's fair, right? Probably not. No. Question how much? Okay, so we aren't exactly sure what we need, but obviously maybe that's not enough. So let's dive a little deeper.
All right.
Technology. Okay, I absolutely love the 4% rule. So what this is figure out how much money you need. So maybe you need, I'm going to just use easy math, guys. So I don't have to have a calculator. Let's say I need $100,000 a year to live off of when I retire. The 4% rule says every consecutive year you take 4% more out of your retirement account to live off of. So first year's 100,000, next year's 104,000, and so on and so forth. By doing that, we use the 4% rule of retirement calculation to figure out how much you need in retirement to last you during that 30-year retirement according to the plan. That calculation is taking the amount you need to live off per year times 25. So again, 100,000 times 25. If I was retiring tomorrow, I would need $2.5 million. Go back up to that chart. If we were going to reference back to that chart again, people 55 to 64 have roughly 256,000, possibly needing anywhere from needing 2.5 million. There's a huge disconnect. There is not enough people that's not enough to retire. And so that's what's super scary is the pensions and things like that of the world aren't here anymore. And so we have to get creative. Not only though, do we need like $2.5 million to retire, but I'm not retiring for another 20 years, right? Or longer because I'm got more time. So let's talk about what inflation does. Thanks, man. So if you were going to need $5,000 a month, which is roughly $60,000 a year, you need roughly $1.5 million to retire today. But if in 20 years, it's almost $2.5 million. That's a lot of money. And then if you needed 10 grand, that would be about 3 million. And then again, almost $5 million in 20 years. So the idea is that you need the money today. That is huge. And then to know that that's obviously going to grow with inflation over time, but Dylan's going to kind of help us figure out how we can get there.
Yeah. So there's kind of two different ways to look at this. And this is where I kind of challenge you to think outside of the box, right? So getting creative, looking at different strategies to build that secure retirement. So kind of your traditional way, right? Most people, they have a 401k through their employer. A certain part of a percentage of their paycheck goes straight in their 401k. They don't see it. Ideally, their employer matches it. And that's a great start. That's something I, obviously highly encourage. I do myself. But is that, after looking at the numbers that Nikki just, showed us, is that really going to be enough to get it done? Are you maxing out that 401k? Have you set up a Roth IRA as well, a pre-tax and a post-tax? So those are kind of just your traditional ways. You have a job, you get paid W-2. People will throw some money into savings, but they don't really put anything into investments or anything into real estate. So kind of the new way we want you to look at things is outside of your typical 401k. Also, I would say Roth IRA, but think of investing, whether it be stock market or real estate, leveraging assets such as real estate, right? We're going to kind of go over an example that showed two different scenarios of, investing in real estate versus the stock market, kind of what that looks like. Financial literacy, kind of our whole, bread and butter here at NEO. That is really kind of what we strive on. So, strictly education. So we are, switching from simply getting people into homes to being educators and masters of our crafts, knowing what's going on in the economy, relaying that information to our clients, explaining every little detail that, is part of the loan process. And then, what the next 30 years looks like to gain that financial freedom. Entrepreneur, like side hustles, things like that. Were you saying something, Nikki?
I was just going to say, did you see that question that popped up? It said, why do we think people are so underprepared for retirement? Do you want to address that?
So underprepared for retirement?
I think for me, I think it's just lack of education. Just spot on the financial literacy. I think people, just from my personal experience of doing my annual financial reviews with my clients, I feel like when we do our calls and we're like, hey, so how's everything going? And we're talking about retirement. Yeah, I'm doing the match. I'm doing the employer 401k match. I'm good. Are you good? And they don't know and have that further education in the right people in their sphere to help them understand that maybe that isn't. So I think it's necessarily just not being educated. That financial literacy for us at NEO is so huge. and why I think that people are so underprepared. Again, you can add more to it. I was just
Right.
going-
Well, yeah, and on top of that, I would say, we're big on building a family office, right? So we ask all of our clients, do you have a financial advisor? Do you have a CPA, a real estate planner? And, they say the wealthiest people aren't wealthy because they have money. They're wealthy because they have information. They have a team that works for them that studies this stuff every single day, right? I'm watching mortgage rates every minute. It's a sickness. Like I probably shouldn't, all day
You're
long.
not lying.
That's what I'm looking at. So yes, teaching the financial literacy, making sure they have those people in place, or if they don't, building, getting them on that right track to get to where they need to be. But again, thinking outside of the box, thinking besides just simply contributing to your 401k, again, education is huge. That is kind of what we're all about. I feel like now I'm just simply more of an educator than anything.
That's true.
So the 2-pass thing. So this is a fun little example I like to bring up. And it's not financial advice. I'm not steering you one way or another. I just want you to think of this because I feel like a lot of people miss this. So imagine you have just $100,000 just sitting in a checking account, which if you do, that is awesome. You're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing. But so there's 2 different paths, right? Let's say you want to invest the money, like, I don't know what to do with it. I have a little surplus of cash. I just don't know what to do. And again, we're just thinking outside of the box here. The one way we have the stock market. Okay, we look at the S&P 500 over the last 30 years. It has an average rate of return of about just under 10%. So 10% of that 100,000, that's about $10,000 annually. Now let's look at stock market. That rate of return is just under, if we look at appreciation of homes for the last 30 years, just under 5%. Or let's just say 5% to use a round even number. So you think about it like, 5% is lower than 10%, but that $100,000 could be a down payment on a home. So let's just say it's a 20% down payment, which gives us to a $500,000 home, right? So in that situation, that gives you $25,000 for annual rate of return. And it's going to obviously continue to appreciate. So, some people will say, well, the S&P 500 will give me 10%. A house might give me 5%. Well, you're leveraging the asset when you buy a home. Same with investment properties. You're leveraging that asset. There will be appreciation. There will be amortization, which we'll get into later. So again, just another way to think about things. I think a lot of people see that it's maybe not as high of a return as the stock market, but you now have a enormous asset that you can utilize. Nikki, you want to touch on the book?
I just love this book if you can't tell. So in this book, again, we'll get to you guys because you came. It talks about the 4 ways that you can make money off real estate. So again, it's just making the emphasis of the book is to make your money work for you, make your assets work for you so that you don't have to work so hard. So on an investment property, you can get paid 4 different ways. You've got appreciation, which is obviously that Dylan was just talking about. Amortization, which again, he'll talk a little bit more about, cash flow, and then depreciation. So 4 different ways that you can improve your finances with a rental property, which is completely powerful. And what he just talked about, that 2 paths only truly was on one of the 4. There's more.
Yeah, which was strictly really just appreciation, right? And leveraging of the asset. But so we'll use a study and we'll just use a low purchase price here. Let's just even take $150,000 purchase price. Obviously, if we're looking at higher, just go ahead and double this. But so we're going to say, we're going to, be conservative here. Let's take a 4% annual growth. So year 1, you buy a house, investment property, let's say $150,000. By year 20, you're going to have that value is going to be $328,000. So, $228,000 increase strictly through appreciation. So that is one of the 4. There's more.
There's more.
Loan balance, which we also call amortization. So as you pay your mortgage, every single payment, you are paying down that loan balance. And one thing I like to bring up is what I think a lot of people miss is when they make their mortgage payment, it's like a forced savings account. So you're literally taking money from your right pocket and putting it into your left pocket. and it can be accessed at a later time, right? So later, Nikki will go into details of different ways you can come up with money for down payments. One of them, tapping into equity, right? So just another way that you build equity in the home that you can utilize later on. So think of that forced savings account. In this example, $120,000 loan balance, year 20, it's down to 70,000, and that's using 20% down in a 7.5% rate. But you can see there's about $50,000 right there in strictly amortization on top of the appreciation. Rental income, the investment property aspect. Obviously, over the last couple of years, we've seen rent prices soar. They're pretty crazy high right now. So, not only are you going to get paid through appreciation, amortization, but your rental income will go up while your loan balance is going down. And if it's a high interest rate, you'll refinance and make that payment even lower. But anyway, like rental, $1,500 a month rental income by year 20, you assuming a 4% annual increase, $3,286. So you're doubling that in 20 years of the monthly rental income. Obviously it's a long-term game. This is no get rich quick scheme, but this is off of just one investment property, at a pretty low purchase price. So you can, it's kind of crazy when you see the numbers of, the multiple different ways that real estate actually, you can get paid through that. So Nikki, you want to take this one?
And so kind of in recap, so your home value is 328,000, your balance of your loan is 70. So you initially have just straight equity or generational wealth, even if you were going to give those to the kids, of $250,000. Okay. And let's just take a 2-second minute. You bought $150,000 house and you put $30,000 down. 20 years later, you have $250,000. That's fantastic. And that's not even counting your rental income. Okay. Just big picture there for you guys. Rental income, you are sitting on a cushion, ideally, again, if all the numbers work out, the rate increases and all the things with rent, that you're sitting on over $2,000 in cash flow. If you were wanting to, again, I wouldn't wait 20 years to do this, but if you were wanting to grow your portfolio at that time, you would be able to pull out $175,000 worth of equity on this particular house to go buy multiple other rentals and have $2,000 worth of cash flow to help offset future mortgage payments. And that is really, truly the power of what we're talking about, getting into one and getting into another one and having them really trying to build off of each other. So Dylan and I are both certified mortgage planning specialists. We got designated. And so we have a little more tools up our belt to help our clients make some financial strategies and decisions around financial freedom and wealth. So I'm going to walk through three different scenarios with 3 of my clients that I had this last 6 months and how they're looking for investment properties. We'll kind of dive into this one, the first one detailed, and kind of walk you through what we do. So 100,000 purchase price, 20% down, that's 20,000. Closing costs in this scenario was 3,500. So they're all in out of pocket to buy this house was 23,500. And again, we don't always know how long people are going to hold homes. If they never know, I just always put hey, let's say you have this house for 10 years. Obviously, I hope they hold it for 10, 15, 20, generational wealth, give it to the kids, that kind of thing. But let's just say they hold it for 10 years. Again, a conservative appreciation of 4%. And if they decide to sell down the road, they got their 6% realtor commission fee. So obviously jump onto the right-hand side in the middle of the page. We're going to talk about the mortgage. It's 80,000. Now, disclaimer, this is not current interest rates on an investment property of 6.625. But we were doing some financial planning for them of what their rate was today and what their future rate would possibly be in the next 1 to 2 years when we refinance. So I really wanted them to have a really good blended interest rate so they understand what that rate of return was. So just disclaimer, that is not the current rate, but we needed them to see both sides because this is not just a 1 to 2 year loan. It was a 10+ year loan. Okay. So let's say they have $1,200 in rent. The mortgage payment was that $512. Taxes, insurance, they're going to make on this one about $400 cash flow. I'm not naive to know there won't be vacancy losses and home improvements and things like that. We are aware of that, but sometimes it's hard to predict it. Plus, on the vacancy rate side, you also have rent increases. So those do sometimes offset each other. So this is just a quick overview to help clients understand. So if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, though, you can see that this particular incidence or this option gives them about 25% rate of return, which is fantastic. Good one for them. Again, not every scenario is that way, but just kind of shows you some options. Again, go over this one quickly. 150,000, similar scenario. Based off taxes, insurance on this one, about 350 cash flow, 19.7 rate of return, still a fantastic investment. Again, talking back to the S&P, there's SP, what the stock market, I'm so good at this. Little under 10%, these are above 10%. So again, where you're putting your money into things like that.
It's called the S&P 500.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you. And then this next one was a fourplex, 225, looking at a fourplex. Each apartment was roughly about $500-ish per rental, 500 to 600. And so this was going to cash flow pretty well for them, about 16.98% rate of return. So ways to get into a home. So we call this house hacking. How do you get into multiple properties with the least amount down and kind of just get creative? We always say get our creative hat on. Like my clients come to me and they want to join the rental market and they aren't sure how. This is kind of where we start. So some of our clients have bought a home and rented out to some of their friends and got rent income from friends. I had a client of mine, her whole basement was an apartment. I have a veteran, he bought a duplex and he lives in one side and rents the other. So it makes income for him. Kitty condos, what that is where the parent goes and buys a condo, lets their kid live there, and then eventually they can flip that into investment property when the kid moves out. Flip that the other way around. I had one this year where the client bought a home for their parent to live in, same situation, mom and dad couldn't afford it. They bought it. They'll be able to possibly turn that into a rental if they want to down the road as well. But again, limited down because it is that person's primary residence, not my clients, but the parents. Okay. Second homes, I've got quite a few realtor friends who have some second homes all over the country and are enjoying those as we speak. Some people have friends that they collaborate assets with, like let's go buy a rental together. Let's put our money together and let's do that. And then the last one we'll let Dylan dive into because that's like his baby of like how he's going to get into the rental property.
So yeah, buy and move every few years. So a lot of people don't know this, and what I think, anyone wanting to get started, I should say, this would probably be the easiest way is to just take the house that you're living in now, and just go buy another primary residence, and you can actually turn your house into a rental. And it actually, if you have a signed lease, you can use 75% of that income to help you qualify for your next home. So you really don't need to make any more money and can qualify for an even higher purchase price. Have to have a signed lease. But so if you can, kind of just rinse and repeat. Now, obviously not everyone wants to move all the time, but if you're willing, say you're younger and, maybe single looking to build some wealth before you start a family, that's probably your best option. I mean, you technically only have to live in the house for 1 year before you can move out and then just buy another primary residence, which only requires 5% down. Now, if you go and buy an investment property just by itself, say you don't want to move, you own a home, you need a minimum of 15% down. And we usually steer you more towards 20 just because the rate takes such a hit on 15, but 15 is technically the minimum. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good strategy that I would at least consider.
So if you're going to do the whole primary to primary residence to investment property conversion, there is so many different options you can tap into. We'll let Dylan talk about the last one, but we've got Home Possible, which is a conventional product for 3% down. It's just a little bit better. Fannie and Freddie are two conventional products that carry it. It's just a little bit better interest rates and PMI, but again, we won't go too much detail. But FHA, you could put 3.5% down, conventional 3 to 5% down, physician loans, sometimes there's 0% down up to 5%. USDA, if you're buying in a rural market, go buy your first home with 0% down if you qualify. VA, like I said, my client bought that duplex. Great programs. Again, there's logistics on the VA we can talk about later. Message me, DM me, whatever. And then Chenoa is our down payment program as well that we have that we can offer clients to help out with, get their foot in the door. And then Dylan's got the next one.
And just to clarify, this is if you were to go buy another primary, what the down payment would be on the new home, turning your previous into an investment property. These are not like investment property down payments, right? So This is if you are living in a home, you're going to go buy a new home. These are your down payment options and turning that previous home into a rental. And then another one, so now we, at NEO, we now have brokered options, meaning we kind of do some, what we call a non-qualified mortgage. One of them being DSCR loan. That's a debt service coverage ratio loan. Now it's kind of unique. It usually requires at least 20% down, but really savvy real estate investors use this a lot. Basically, all it means is that as long as the rent is more than the mortgage payment, there's no income docs necessary, no pay stubs, no W-2s. If you're self-employed, write everything off, don't need tax returns, just needs to rent more than it's the mortgage payment. So DSCR, if you're looking to really get into it, that is something to kind of keep in your back pocket. Nikki, I'll let you take that.
So obviously there's many places you guys can pull your equity from, or not equity, pull your down payment from. So one of the probably the biggest ones for me that I'm working with clients with right now is through our annual financial reviews, as I call them once a year, and we have a conversation about how everything's going and all the logistics. We review their current equity position. So we get on their home bot, talk about it. Gosh, I had some today that were like $150,000 worth of equity they're just sitting on. And so current home equity lines, second mortgages, things like that are great places to pull that money for that portfolio for the rental portfolio. Borrowing money from your 401k is also good because you pay yourself interest on your 401k. Not a terrible thing to do. Gifts from family members are not allowed on investment properties, but they are allowed if you're going to buy your primary. Okay, so that you can use that as a way to get your foot in it, or to your very first home, or your next primary. Obviously, IRA, things like that, tax refunds, and then obviously closing costs are an option, but we are not seeing that right now in our market. It is getting a little tight, so I'm sure it will come back at some point.
Question. So I think this is really relatable, especially right now. We kind of had the whole bank collapse and the economy is not looking too shabby. Everyone's bringing up the R word, recession. So feel free to throw it in the chat, A, B, or C's. How does a recession typically impact home values, would you say? Now look at the chat. Okay. Couple B's and a couple C's. Okay. And an A. Okay. Believe it or not, home values actually increase during a recession. And I'll show you some data that supports that, going all the way back to 1963. So the gray bars are when we hit a recession. So as you can see, through every recession, housing has remained really strong, actually gone up. The only time it has not was 2008. And if you notice, home prices are actually going down before the recession. That's because that was when we had the housing bubble. So the housing bubble actually caused the recession. It wasn't a recession that impacted home values. And we'll kind of go into why today is so much different than 2008. I'm a big, I love throwing articles on social media and kind of debunking the articles because, fear sells. The media kind of just likes to drive, for clicks. So, I love open feedback to anything. And I just, all you can do is provide facts and data, right? So this is one chart I like to show, and we'll kind of show why today is different than 08, regardless of what you might hear in the media. So, the easiest way to put it is simple supply and demand, right? Econ 101. So in terms of supply, obviously our inventories are way down. In 2008, we had about 4 million homes for sale, and today we have less than 1 million. This number here, the 2.5 is actually even more. It's a little outdated chart. So right now we have 15 more households or potential buyers. That's our demand. And we have 2.5 million, it's actually more than that, less homes for sale. So that doesn't necessarily scream bubble, right? And another thing to think about is a lot of first-time home buyers, the actual average age of first-time home buyers is 33 years old, which think millennials. A lot of millennials are hitting that age range and they're entering the housing market. And as inflation, as rates continue to come down, and I think it's really important to know why we say that, and it's because mortgage interest rates follow inflation. So as we see inflation come down, which is what the Fed is doing, They're doing anything they can to kill inflation, regardless of how bad it hurts the economy. So if that tells you anything of where rates are going, right? So rates will follow inflation. Well, what happens when rates come down? We have more demand, right? We already have an inventory problem. So when rates come down, more people enter the market and housing prices will go up. Now, I saw a stat the other day that said for every 1% that interest rates come down, 5 million more renters will qualify for a home. And I'm like, that's a little alarming. I mean, I hate to but just being totally transparent. I mean, that's a true stat. And, supply and demand, or our supply is already kind of low. So if that shows you kind of where we're headed, doesn't necessarily scream bubble for any of us. So just kind of back to demand, I'll kind of just briefly run through these. 42% of all buyers are under the age of 34. Again, millennials, the average first-time home buyer is age 33. 40% of all buyers are first-time home buyers. 52% of adults age 18 to 34 are living with parents. So there's gonna be a lot of demand, especially as rates come down. I know Nikki and I talk like every day. Everyone that we speak with, the number one reason as to why they don't buy a home is because rates are too high. So they're waiting for rates to come down. So that demand is going to be quite high.
And supply, like, oh, it's just too tight. Well, you just wait. I feel like it's going to get worse.
Yeah. I mean, literally, we're already in multiple offer situations, things like that. So it's going to get possibly a little bit tougher as we move forward. And back to like investor properties, I thought this article was pretty eye-opening. They say money talks, right? So what is the big money doing, right? The people that have all the information, they kind of have their family office set up telling them what to do. I mean, obviously Wall Street tends to usually win and not lose. So large institutions are set to own 40% of single family rental homes by 2030. So they are swooping in, buying those rental properties. They're, creating that cash flow. They realize the gains they can have in real estate, and they're swooping in and they're building these huge real estate investment portfolios. BlackRock just built their largest one. It was like over $30 billion. So, the big money, usually a good idea is to follow what the big money is doing. Okay, questions.
Yes, questions. I think I saw some pop in there, Dylan. The first one that I saw was, what happens if people like lose their jobs? Obviously, we talk about recession, talk about things slowing down. What if we see it like a loss in jobs? I can answer that, but I didn't know if you had anything offhand that you wanted to say.
I mean, I would say that's a very realistic, that could definitely very well happen. And we've already seen job layoffs, right? Tech industry's taken a huge hit. Now, obviously, I think one good thing would be obviously having an investment portfolio. You have a passive income, so you don't need that. Another thing I like to think about though is, I saw a stat the other day as well, like 30% of homes are owned outright. So
yeah, I was gonna say,
what's that?
Yeah. I was gonna say our realtor recessions slide in there. Yeah.
So, people are sitting on a lot of equity in their home. In an emergency crisis, they take out a home equity line of credit. They're drowning in debt, maybe a, cash out refi. I know rates are still a little high right now. I'd probably steer someone towards a home equity line of credit before a cash out refi, even though I would love to do your refinance, but I think it'd be better for you financially to take that route. Yeah, I think that's very realistic. And just because we're talking about investment properties, I think anyone that has like a real estate portfolio would be the absolutely least concerned. But anyone sitting on a bunch of equity, which is most of America right now, also 40% of homeowners have an interest rate below 4% right now. So their payments aren't huge. People might have to trade in the fancy vehicles and stuff, but that's what I would say. I don't know. What would you say?
No, I was going to pull the stats that we had. Like, I can't remember what the average loan to value was in the country from our report that we were doing last.
The average loan, the people that did have a mortgage, it was like 40%.
Yeah, something crazy.
Yeah,
so I just know like there's
equity,
plenty of equity. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of equity, which Obviously I'd probably use that a lot as a last resort. You kind of want to use that equity for things that will build you money in the future, like to buy a new asset, or, if you want to do a home renovation. But I mean, if push comes to the shove, I mean, you got to put food on the table. So I would definitely say, yeah, if you need some money, like, and, for the people that don't own a home, where is the safety net? So I feel like homeowners are in a much better situation than renters, unfortunately. And that's just the honest truth. I also saw, speaking of stats, sorry, they're kind of all like coming to me now. 40 the average net worth of a homeowner versus a renter is 40% more.
Wow.
So again,
Good.
leveraging the asset. What else do you have for questions?
So strategies for, like, what would be some strategies for owning or getting multiple homes? Anything outside of your scenario that you had mentioned?
I think that, you mean like moving out and turning your primary into an investment property? Anything outside of that? I would, again, point towards equity. I would probably go towards the HELOC. If they have a lot of money, just saved up, I would maybe go like more towards maybe a DSCR loan where they don't need any income docs, because a lot of those people are like self-employed, so they don't technically have income on paper per their taxes. So there are a lot of different avenues there. I mean, my favorite is taking your primary and turning it into investment property, because then you don't have to follow any investment property down payment guidelines. The rate's a lot better. I think we never really touched on the rate for investment property are pretty high, to be honest, especially where rates are right now. So, when you buy that primary, your rate is much lower, your down payment is much lower. Anything you had?
I mean, like down the road, I would always like to bring in maybe like a commercial lender. If you get a portfolio that gets big enough, I like to do kind of like widen your family practice and get like a commercial lender in there. And we could talk about operating lines of credits and things like that with your portfolio, things that are just kind of outside of the norm. And so again, that would be something that as you get more of those, you can get kind of creative. But that's more of a complicated conversation. But yeah, you can bring another person that's an expert that can do some different things with us. This one I might answer. This one, it was property management. Like, I don't really want to take care of the toilet, right? You don't want to, like, that's me. Like, if I get a rental property, please don't call me to fix it. But I do work with a realtor in town that he has a property management company. I've been picking his brain on like costs and stuff. It's about 8 to 10% of your monthly rent. They'll vet the clients out, check their credit, do all the things. They always know the guy to fix things. You just get the check in the mail. So don't let maybe you're not handy or you don't know a guy and all that kind of stuff and know what you're doing stop you. Yes, we could put the property management thing into your analysis as well to make sure it's still profitable. But that is something like, I'm not handy. That's the route that I would go. And then maybe this next question might actually lead to this slide, Dylan, but best place to start. This is the next question.
Are we on this? What? Best place?
What's the last question was, what's the best place to start? And I think you go with the slide that you're on was so good. Like, start the consultation. Like, you don't have to necessarily have a plan today. Like, you don't know when you're going to want to buy a rental property. So I think honestly, just sit down and talk to somebody about it and make a plan. We do our financial reviews, and I have made a plan with my client. He's going to buy possibly a rental property this summer. And then we made a plan for him to buy another primary next summer and flip his primary into a rental. But again, he didn't know that until we did the consult, kind of laid it out and talked about assets and income and all the things. And so talking and finding your personal like blueprint that's specific to you and your strategy, I think is important.
Yeah, and this is one that got brought up, and we were actually talking about this question in my networking group, was at what point does it make sense to have a property manager? And I thought about it, and I said, well, obviously having just one rental property probably don't need a property.
Dude, I'm doing it. I don't care. I can't do it.
Really?
No judging all of you people out there.
And in that case, I would consider maybe, again, this isn't a get rich quick scheme. So if you have a property manager and you're not making, maybe you're not even cash flowing it. Maybe it's just a break even when you pay the mortgage and you pay your property manager, but you have to think long term, right? It's just like investing in the stock market. Maybe I'm not cash flowing at year one. Maybe I'm not cash flowing at year two. But year 3, I up my rent. Maybe I refinance that property into a lower interest rate. My payment's now lower. So I increase my cash flow in 2 different ways. Or, speaking of I know the property man, the guy that owns the real estate that you're talking about. He says, well, if someone's living there, I don't necessarily kind of really increase their rent a whole lot, maybe just a little bit here and there. But then once a new tenant comes in, at that point, I can kind of really look at the market and really crank it up. So, as the turnover happens, he really sees the rent increases, even more than like maybe that 4% if rents are crazy high that year, right? I'm sure landlords, or real estate investors were loving life over the last couple of years as rents went crazy high. I mean, they're cash flowing like crazy, right? They're probably all sitting on a 3% interest rate, and they're just like, well, rents in the neighborhood have gone up 10%. Let's just crank mine up and make buku dollars. So, sorry, I went on a tangent there, but.
But yes, again, encourage you guys to make a consult. If it's something you're interested in, you don't have to have any commitments on like a game. We just can talk about it and just kind of get the juices flowing a little bit. And then next slide is our contact information, guys. Again, I will reach out about the book. Great read. Feel free to follow us on those are our Instagrams. Dylan's always a little bit better about it than I am and putting social media content out there, and you'll learn things, share with your family and friends. Again, reach out to us for if you need anything. Anything else, Dylan?
No, I would just say, going back to like my networking group, one thing we asked is like, who would be the best referral for you, right? And I would say anyone that even for 10 seconds has thought about real estate. And again, going to that consultation, even if they aren't buying in 5 years, having a 5-year plan is much better than in 5 years seeing the house of your dreams come to market and going, I have no idea what I'm doing, right? Is your credit score in line? Do you have money saved up? Do you know what down payment is required? Do you know, how much you need in all to close on top of the escrow account, the bank closing costs, the down payment? So having a strategy is much better than just not knowing.
And just aside, since this is the NEO way, the holistic approach, if you just aren't sure if you're on track for retirement outside of investment properties, call us. So, I mean, we're a one-stop shop. We can take it all.
Exactly. And if we can't help you, we know people that do.
Yes. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. Much appreciated. Looking forward to helping you guys in any way down in the future.
Cool. Bye, everyone.
Bye.